So, I'm going to play for you today a dramatic testimony of a creative miracle that took place on the mission field in South America. I'm usually not impressed with most stories because I'm a New Yorker and most things really don't impress me. But this one really caught my attention, and you're going to want to stick with me to the end to hear this. This is a creative miracle, one which is totally supernatural in nature. For example, a creative miracle would be someone who had no arm and it grew back. It's really hard to kind of argue with these type of miracles. But I realized these things had still taken place as I took a missions class in seminary, and we had missionaries from all over the world attend classes and tell us of dramatic miracles, of people being healed or raised from the dead, or supernatural things that happen, or supernatural protection. Then I realized, for whatever reason, we don't really see these a lot of time in America, although they do happen. It's partially because we have such great medical care here. This testimony will be told by Ken Fish. He is the overseer of the church that I attend, Kingdom Revival, New York City. I also take classes at his Orbis School of Ministry, and I get to work with him a few times a year. And he's coming to New York City in June, so I'll get a chance to work with him and help run the meeting. I share this because I know him and I know he tells the truth. I know this story is the real deal. So I'll let the story speak for itself. I'm sharing this to build your faith, to get you hungry to see God move in supernatural hearing power today.
You really want me to tell an amazing story rather than a genetic one. Let me tell you a physical, I'll call it a physical reconstruction and deformity one. So this occurred about 4 years ago in El Salvador. And there was we were doing a street meeting. We were literally on a street in this provincial capital, but even though it was a provincial capital, it was a small town, about 30,000 or so people. And we were preaching. We had a band out there. We were doing about what you'd expect, and we'd given an altar call, and several hundred people had come to the Lord. And then we gave a call for people who needed healing. And by the way, just ahead of this, we had 3 quadriplegics healed that had been brought in wheelchairs, and they got up out of their wheelchairs and pushed them home. So that'll stretch a lot of listeners anyway. And he has this gauze thing on his head, and a couple of my team that were with me, they pounced on him and started to pray for him. And after a bit, they came over and they said, "We're not getting anywhere with this guy. Can you pray for him?" So I said, "All right, well, what have we got?" And they said, "Well, he's missing half of his face." And I said, "What do you mean he's missing half of his face?" And they said, "He's missing half of his face." So I walked over, and they had removed this gauze that was all over his whole face. And there was a hole here on the right side of his face. And it was large enough that if I didn't do this, but had I made a fist, I could have inserted it into his face. And his right eyeball was missing. His nose was gone except for this left side, this left part of the nostril right here. But all of this was gone. He had 3 live cancers that were about this big. They were black like my sweater is. One just about here, just above the bridge of the nose, one here over the eyebrow, and one over here. And he was a cancer patient, and the cancer had literally eaten away most of his face. His tongue was gone, and if you looked into his head, you could see his brainstem. So they had the gauze on him basically to keep the dust from out of his head. And I'm not exaggerating this story. This is exactly what it was. The reason I'm telling you this is because you're asking for like amazing, super, ultra miraculous stories.
Yeah, I believe it, man.
This one even is like
I've been with you.
Genetic healing.
I've seen your work, man.
Compared to this, So anyway, there's this hole, right? Like I said, if I'd wanted to, I could have put my entire fist into that hole. It was that big of a thing. And I look at this guy, and I'm kind of like, well, Jesus, I heard, it says in one place in the scriptures that you healed the maimed. Okay, this would be a really good time for one of those. And I also was thinking, all right, this guy's he's either going to get healed or he's going to die. I mean, when you're that bad, it's a 1-0 outcome, right?
Right.
So anyway, these 2 teammates that have been praying for him and we laid hands on him, and I commanded the face to grow in and be healed, and nothing happened. And then I did it again, and nothing happened. And so they'd already prayed a bit. So we're kind of like, all right, well, we did the best we could. And we said, well, God bless you, be warmed and filled, and sent him on his way. We didn't really say be warmed and filled. But
right,
anyway.
right. We caught the satirical reference you were making.
Okay, good. So off he goes. And then we were right at the end of that trip, and I returned to California. And then like 3 days later, or 4 days later, I wake up in the morning and I have a message from one of my other teammates who is my main translator when I'm in that part of the world. And as it happens, providentially, his brother is the attending physician to the man that I just described. And my translator has sent me a text overnight and said, you're not going to believe this. This man's name is Jose Luna. He says, Jose Luna's face has grown back. And I said, I need pictures. Send me pictures.
No doubt.
So, he talks to his brother, who, again, is the attending physician, who gets takes photographs, sends them to my friend, who sends them on to me. And sure enough, this man's face had grown in. And the way it had grown in was really interesting, because the back of the jaw and the front of the chin, they merged about here. And it's almost like there's a little divot here where there's just a bit of a, dip in. All of this had filled in. The only thing that wasn't normal was he had what I would term a proto-eyeball. He had what appeared to be the white of an eye, but there was no iris, no color in the right eye, but a proto-eyeball was growing, and I thought, okay, maybe that one's going to take a little longer to occur. Now, I do know sometimes miracles they take a little bit of time. They're not always instantaneous, although there's a widespread perception that miracles are always instantaneous. They're not. When Moses parted the Red Sea, that took all night for the Red Sea to part. It says that right in the scripture, as an example. So anyway, it had taken, I don't know how much time exactly. I heard about it on the weekend, on Saturday morning after we finished out in El Salvador. So maybe 3 days, possibly 4, but anyway, maybe as much, maybe it only took overnight, and I only heard about it 2 days after that. But anyway, the face had regrown. The following year, I went back to El Salvador with a different team. That man came to our meetings. I got to talk with him and interview with him and so forth, and the face had regrown.